Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can confirm that you are live.
All right, sounds good. So it's 3:06 now. So I'll formally call the meeting to order. Welcome. We have an agenda in front of us, and the first thing on it is the approval of minutes from our last meeting in July. So if there's any discussion about that, now would be the time to hear it. If not, perhaps you could get the motion to pass the minutes from last month rather.
I so move.
Hi there.
Hi. I was going to move the minutes from last week.
Yep. Any seconders?
It's Cassandra. I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you both. So the minutes are approved. So we have this month's agenda. Are there any?
So we just need to have a vote on the.
Formally, yes, a yay or nay. I apologize.
Oh, no trouble.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we hear yays or nays on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, so the minutes are approved. That motion is carried. Okay, so next, the order of business for today and the approval of any additions or deletions. Are there any additions or deletions, or is it as we see before us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the committee, there are no requests through the clerk's office at this time for additions or deletions to the minutes or to the order of business today.
Yes, the agenda. Okay, and any business arising out of the minutes? I assume that is also a no.
Yep, no business arising out of the minutes. If we can just get a motion and a seconder for the approval of the order of business.
Approve that? Okay, I didn't realize. Yeah, if I could get a motion for item number 3 on our agenda, the approval of the order of business.
It's Cassandra. I move that we approve the order of business as delivered to everybody.
Cassandra, thank you.
Lois, I will second that.
Thank you, Lois. So the order of business is approved. As we said already, there is no business arising from the minutes. So we have a couple of items on our agenda today, and we should put out a call for any declarations of conflict of interest, potential conflict of interest. Hearing no voices, I assume we're all okay. So move on, and there is still no deferred business in front of us. Simon?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. No deferred business from the last meeting.
And have we received any correspondence, petitions, or delegates to add this month?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's been no correspondence received through the clerk's office as of this time.
All right. And are there any information items that we should be aware of?
No, Mr. Chair, no information items brought forward from the last meeting.
All right, moving quickly then. So we'll move on now to the meat of the meeting. We have a report from the staff on a property in Dartmouth, 173 Creighton Avenue. So I will turn it over to the staff, and I assume they have a presentation for us. Oh, and here we are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think everybody can hear me and see the presentation up on the screen now. So as mentioned, this is Heritage Case 509, which is a property pertaining to a property 173 Creighton Avenue in Dartmouth. So this is an application that has come to us in March of this year through the property owner, Sean and Adair Collins. So next slide, please. So this slide shows some context to the subject site. There it is. So the subject property, it's located on the northern side of Creighton Avenue, near the intersection of Creighton and Lakeview. This area was once formerly part of the Keeler family's farm estate, which established in the early 1800s. And today it contains the dwelling pictured here on your right. It's a 1.5-story dwelling that was constructed in the craftsman bungalow style. Next slide, please. So as always, this is an overview of our heritage registration evaluation criteria. There are 6 criteria. Each has a maximum possible score for a total maximum score of 100 points. So if you, the committee, award a score of 50 or more points, the application will be advanced to regional council. If these scoring fall short of that 50-point plateau, then the application will be considered complete and the registration process will continue. Next slide, please. So this is the first criteria, as always, age. So 173 Creighton Avenue, it's again sits amongst lands that once comprised the Keeler family farm. So the first known Keeler in the Dartmouth area is believed to be John Henry Keeler, also known as Henry. He relocated to Dartmouth from Lunenburg around 1802 with his wife, Elizabeth Tufts. So upon arrival, Henry acquired several large lots of land that stretched from the present-day Brightwood Golf Course to Lake Banook. So by about 1827, Henry owned about 10 acres of cultivated land, which contained at that time one single-unit dwelling. And over time, the Keeler family continued to further develop the area. So it's worth noting that about 50 years later, one of their 9 children, William, acquired ownership of several farmstead lots pictured here. This is the Hopkins Atlas map from 1878, and this is the oldest map, I guess, that we could find of lot ownership in the area. So you can see some of the lots that William owned at that time. So next slide, please. So over time, by 1884, William and his wife Jane granted a portion of the lands to their son Charles J. Keeler. And so the assessment records from this property in about 1915 to 1917 note that Charles owned lands, a home, and livestock. And then the assessment records changed in 1917 to reference what is labeled as a new house. So this would be referring to the house of the subject property. So given that it appears the dwelling was constructed in circa 1918, based on this historical assessment of records, staff would recommend a score of 5 points for age.
Okay, so we generally have been doing this as we go along. So if we want to carry that forward to this meeting, is there any any thoughts from the floor on scoring for age? I'd be happy to give it. Well, I can't. I shouldn't comment. But can I hear any suggestions?
It's Cassandra. I agree with staff's assessment and the 5 points.
Okay. Anyone else?
It's Lois. I would support that too.
Thank you, Lois. Moving toward a consensus. Anyone thinking differently? Well, I heard someone there. Okay, in the absence of any protest, I guess we'll go with the 5, Jesse, and carry on to the next stage.
Great. So moving on to slide 6, which will be the criteria number 2, the architectural importance. So this, the existing dwelling on the site, pictured here on the left, is a very strong example of the Craftsman bungalow style, which was prominent in Nova Scotia between 1900 and 1920. And it is a North American adaptation of the British arts and craft movement, which is a very popular style of the era or previous era. So the Craftsman style here in Nova Scotia is characterized by a building profile that's typically 1.5 stories tall, a gently sloping roof, very broad eaves, and a full veranda with a low supporting wall, amongst other features. So you can see that the existing dwelling really embodies these characteristics, but it's also worth noting that the dwelling has some very unique features as well, mainly the sleeping porch on the upper story, which you can see there, as well as kind of a tiered roof, which isn't totally common on Craftsman dwellings. So moving on to the next slide, you'll see that because this is a representative but also very unique example of the style, staff are recommending a score between 16 and 20 points for historical or architectural importance, rather.
All right, thank you. So 16 to 20 would be an appropriate range. It's a gorgeous house. I just wish I lived there. Any thoughts from the floor on how we might score this?
Hi, it's Iona. I would probably give it the higher end because it is a unique looking building, and for its time, it was very well kept, and I do like it. It's a beautiful building. So
Mhm. So toward the higher end then. Anyone else? Any other comments?
This is Marisha. I would agree with the higher end. So why don't we say 20?
I'd support a 20. David.
Yeah.
It's Lois.
too.
I would support 20 also.
All right. So it sounds like we're leaning toward 20. So anyone else? 20 sounds good. I feel like I'm an auctioneer. Okay, 20. So Jesse, if you could take us on.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next slide here focuses on the significance of the architect or builder, and is often the case after doing our research. We were unable to identify the architect or builder. So based on some staff research and an assessment of some of the building's exterior features, we did note in the staff report that it's possible that it could have been constructed by Nova Scotia architect Andrew Cobb, though there is very little documentation on his private residential work. However, after submitting the application, the applicant did reach out and provide some anecdotal information from their neighbor, who is a descendant of the Keeler family, that suggested it was more likely a skilled local builder, not Mr. Cobb. So given that there's some ambiguity here and there's no documented evidence that we could pinpoint, staff would recommend a score of 0 for significance of builder.
Yeah, this is an issue that's come up before with unknown builders. Anyone want to speak on the 0?
This is Jennifer.
Yes,
I thought it was an Andrew Cobb when I looked at it initially myself, and I've driven past this house many times, and I was surprised that it wasn't classified as an Andrew Cobb. But I think even if a local builder did it in the fashion of Andrew Cobb, I think that does hold a bit of significance. I agree that it's not large, but I think even with the fact that this builder was able to pull off something that looked like a Cobb after all this many years, that people are still looking at it thinking that it is, I think it at least should have a 1 thrown at it. I don't feel right putting a 0 on it. Just my 2 cents.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. Oop.
This is Marisha. I could support a 1 for that one. I know this question comes up a lot of not significant, but Jennifer's rationale seems very convincing.
I would also support a 1. This is David.
Lois, I would support a 1. There were lots of good imitators probably at the time. This one has stood the test of time.
All right.
This is Luke. I'd actually propose that we push this higher than a 1. Given that we've already identified that the building has some sort of unique architectural importance. To me, that also then carries on over to the significance of the architect or builder. I've always maintained that I think it's completely ludicrous that we give any building that we're considering here, a 0 when we don't have documentary evidence of the significance of the architect or builder. It's always struck me as the wrong sort of default in these situations. I've always thought that we don't have documentary evidence of the builders of ancient structures like Stonehenge, but it would be very strange to suggest that those builders don't have significance. And so, on this scoring, something like Stonehenge or many historic structures around the world would score a 0, which seems odd. I think given there may be some connection to Andrew Cobb here, whether it's imitation or not, that has significance. I think that perhaps merits higher than a 1. And with the building's uniqueness, I propose either on the upper end of that section, so maybe a 3, or potentially pushing into the next category at a 4. But I'd just like to put that to the floor, see what people think.
It's
Mr.
Jennifer.
Chair, it's Cassandra. Oh,
Sorry,
go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. Luke, I don't disagree with anything that you're saying, but I think it also speaks to the ineffectiveness of our scoring system. So I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant to push it. I think I could support a 3. I'm hesitant to push it into the next category just because I do feel that we're just this isn't the vehicle to do it. I think the vehicle to make that statement is more pushing for a different kind of scoring system. I completely agree with everything that you're saying, but I think just we've set a bit of a precedent that we're not going too far out of staff's suggestion when it comes to this one because of the documentation that's lacking. So I could definitely support a 3, bumping it up to the higher of the next category, but I think we might be on a slippery slope going up to the next one. Thank you.
Hi, it's Iona. I would support a 3.
It's Cassandra. I would also support a 3. I think both what Luke and Jennifer said were both really important points. Not comfortable going into the 4 to 6 category, but it seems so strange to have a 20 on the design and then a 0 or even a 1 on the significance of the architect. I think that variance would come under question. I think it's very strange. So I would support a 3.
All right, I think we've settled on 3. If is anyone else thinking a different number? Or are we happy with 3?
I just, Aaron, Principal Heritage Planner, sorry to chime in at the last minute there, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to remind the committee that we do have direction from council to update the evaluation criteria in the coming months as soon as the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan is complete. So that is something that we will certainly be looking at. In the meantime, I think it's important just to sort of maintain the legitimacy of the sort of flawed system that we do have, and just keep in mind that really the purpose of the evaluation criteria is to see whether a building is eligible for registration or not. Once it is eligible, meaning it's achieved 50 points or more in the scoring, it has the same importance in our registry as a building that might score 100. As long as it reaches that threshold, it has the same level of protection, essentially. So it's important, I think, not to try and double dip between categories. So if it's achieving a lot of points on something like age or heritage importance, it doesn't necessarily have to score high in another category to achieve that 50 points. So just wanted to throw that out there. The decision remains with the committee, but I wouldn't necessarily feel bad about giving a 0 just because we don't have information. Doesn't mean the building's not important. Just means that there are other aspects of its history that are gaining the points to achieve that 50 points. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the details, Aaron. And it's good to know that these criteria are constantly under revision. So I guess if we're going to settle on a 3 for this, we could move on to the next segment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving on now, we have architectural merit. First, starting with the construction technique. So looking at the dwelling, it's a 1.5-story wood frame construction that sits on a masonry foundation. So after doing some digging and speaking with a property owner, the exact construction type or technology is unknown, but in looking at the building and the information that we've collected, it does appear to be a common example of wood frame structure. However, that being said, as was kind of alluded to in the past criteria, staff would note that it does display a high level of craftsmanship on the exterior, even though we don't think that the interior structure itself is incredibly unique. So it would have required, as we again discussed, a skilled builder to complete this construction. So next slide, please. So here you'll see, because of that, it's not a rare construction, but it is a fairly skilled and well done building. So staff are recommending a score somewhere between 1 and 6 points. Yeah, that slide there. Or sorry, I think you're 2 or 3 slides ahead. Back one more. Yeah.
Jesse, it may help if you can just identify the slide number just to get us reset.
Sure, it's slide 10, just shows the summary table of staff's recommendation, but staff have recommended 1 to 6 points on a scale of 10. If it's not showing up on the slide, there it is. It's also in the staff report if that's easier for folks to follow along.
Okay, so does anyone on the floor have any thoughts on its architectural merit and how we might score that?
Its lowest, I would suggest it is moderately rare or early, and I'd be inclined to give it a 4 or a 5. It's outstanding and it has survived. And the construction type, while it's unknown, it must have been distinctive even in its early age.
Thank you, Lois. So we have a 5 on the table at the moment. Anyone else have any thoughts? Going once.
This is Luke. Yeah, I would agree with everything Lois just said. So I would support a 5 as well.
All right, 2 5s. Okay, so perhaps we could go with 5 and move on to the next slide.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So next we're moving on to the second part of architectural merit, specifically its style. So again, this is a unique but late example of the craftsman bungalow style. Looking at the front facade picture here, you'll see it's a 1.5 story profile with a square plan, wood shingle siding. It has an off-centered chimney and many craftsman features that you would expect to see, like some of the ones we've touched on already, the large wraparound veranda and the low sloping roof. There are some other character defining elements as well. Again, the sleeping porch and the tiered hip dormers and roof, which are very interesting and unique features of the building. Looking at this picture, you'll also see some very large overhanging eaves and some exposed rafter tails, particularly along the sleeping porch on the upper story. Again, it has a brick chimney, which is offset. If you look at the larger site, just on street view or anything, you'll see that it does have a very large front yard setback, which is a prominent feature of the site. And it also has lots of original wood windows and fenestration as well. So if you move on to slide 12, you'll see that there's a diverse array of window shapes, sizes, and types. So these are just a couple that are worth noting. So there's prominent square windows throughout the building. This window on the top here is a Paladin window that's on the west wall. And below, it's one of the 5 piano windows that the building exhibits. And here you can see through the storm windows that it's a 5/5 pane window, which is quite interesting to see. So on this criteria, it is a late example of the craftsman style as it was constructed circa 1918. However, it is also a very exemplary version of the style. So with these considerations in mind, staff would recommend a score between 4 and 6 points for style.
All right, thank you, Jesse. So we're in a range of 4 to 6 on this house's style. Leaning toward the low end, toward the high end.
Mr. Chair, it's Cassandra. Like others had said earlier, I would love to live in this house. It is so charming. That sleeping porch in particular is really, really interesting. I would score on.
Oh, Cassandra, I lost you at the end there. What was your score?
Sorry, but 6.
Okay, a 6 from Cassandra.
Did you get me this time? 6.
I heard 6. Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That's David. I would also support a 6.
All right.
As Luke, I would also support 6.
Thank you, Luke. All right, well, that's some good enthusiasm. So unless anyone else has some thoughts, I think 6 is the consensus.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving on to the fifth criteria, which is architectural integrity. Staff do note that this dwelling does have a high degree of architectural integrity. If you look at the building and compare it with some of the older aerial photography that we were able to find, that the historic appearance, the original building profile, and many of the details remain intact today. To elaborate on that point, I mean, most of the original wooden windows are still there, as we pictured previously, as our other character defining elements, which we've also summarized. So though there's a high degree of architectural integrity, there have been some modifications on the property, like many of properties over the years. So originally it did have 2 chimneys, but one has since been removed. There are a couple windows that have since been converted to entryways on the property as it evolved over time. This picture here shows one of those in addition to a rear deck construction, which isn't really viewable from the public right away, so it doesn't have an overwhelming impact on its integrity. And we spoke a little bit already about the rafter tails. So in looking at this property, the staff report notes that some of the rafter tails, particularly on one of the dormers and a portion of the main roof, have been removed and vinyl soffit was added. So if you move on to slide 14, you can get a view here of the rafter tails, which are exposed, particularly on this dormer right there. I think you can get a good view of them. So we had some subsequent conversations with the property owner, and they, since making the application, have tried to look into the rafter tail issue a little bit. So they've done some very preliminary exploratory work on a portion of the deck roof, and have come to the conclusion that it's possible that some of these rafter tails may still be existing, but are simply covered rather than removed. So at this point in time, there's not really overwhelming evidence to lean towards that they've all been approved. So there is some ambiguity to the degree to which some rafter tails have been removed or have simply been covered. But we just wanted to send that information your way for consideration as you discuss the scoring. But regardless of the rafter tail situation, staff do note that this property scores quite high in architectural integrity, and we're recommending a score between 11 and 15 points.
This is Marisha. I would say I would go with a 13. There are some changes, but as Jesse pointed out, it's not, it has high deal of architectural integrity. So the windows being changed into entryways and the possibility of still having the rafter tails, but unsure of that. So I would say not a 15, not as high as a 15, but a 13 would probably be a happy medium.
It's Lois. I would support that too. Thank you, Marisha.
Yeah, it's Luke. I was going to suggest a 13 as well, so I support that.
Right. It sounds like we're largely in agreement on this. So 13. 13 for architectural integrity.
Okay, perfect. So moving on to the final scoring criteria, which is relationship to the surrounding area. So the subject property has strong historical connections to the Keeler family, who really cultivated and developed the surrounding area. They've had a long-standing presence in this particular portion of Dartmouth for over 200 years now. The existing dwelling also has some very important physical and visual relationships to 6 other dwellings which remain and were Keeler homes. So this includes the original Keeler homestead, Mount Pleasant, which we believe was constructed circa 1802. And that's pictured here on the left. It's actually located up on 16 Lakeview Avenue. I believe the property was recently sold. So that was the original Keeler homestead. So moving on to the next slide, slide 16. You'll see a couple others. So this is 175 Creighton, which abuts the subject property, and it was the home of Charles J. Keeler, which we referenced earlier. 180 Creighton, pictured here on the right, was the home of William Keeler. And next slide, please. The final one here that we've pictured in the PowerPoint, there's a couple other images in the staff report, is 208, 210 Creighton Avenue, which Ed and George Keeler once resided in. So due to these noteworthy historical and visual connections to the Keeler family and their previous homes. Again, staff would recommend the maximum score, which would be 6 to 10 points for relationship.
Thank you, Jesse. So somewhere in the 6 to 10 range. Any thoughts from anyone?
It's Lois. I would suggest 8 or 9. All of those homes are delightful. No two of them are the same or necessarily from the same period, but they are cohesive. They create a neighborhood and they create energy off each other. So I think it's an important architectural asset.
Okay, so was that a 9, Lois?
I would say an 8 or a 9.
Okay.
Others may not agree. I'd go for 9 myself.
All right, we have a 9 on the table.
This is Luke. I would support a 9 as well for the reasons that Jesse and Lois had outlined there. It does have a really nice relationship to the street. So yeah, I would support a 9 on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
This is Iona. I would support a 9.
Okay, thank you, Iona.
I think it's probably the newest building in the complex. Oh, that's interesting, but there's still that integrity, the unified appearance of the neighborhood.
Okay, I think we're happy with a 9, and
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving on to the next slide, which is the final slide and the recommendation slide. So I believe that pushes the score up to about 61 points unofficially. I think the clerk has tallied the score there.
Yeah.
But that would...
Sorry, I was just jumping in to confirm. Yes, it was indeed 61 points.
Okay, great, thank you. So given that that exceeds the 50-point threshold, staff would recommend that the committee recommends to Regional Council that they set a heritage hearing date to consider the property's inclusion in the Registry of Heritage Property, and then subsequently approve the request to register said property following the hearing in accordance with the Heritage Property Act. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments, staff will do our best to answer them before concluding this portion of the agenda.
Thank you so much, Jesse, for a fascinating presentation. So score 61 in the end for this house. Anyone have any further comments? Other than that, we'd all like to live there. Lois? Okay, perhaps I could get somebody from the floor to put the motion. Do I have any takers?
David here, I'll make the motion.
David, thank you very much.
I move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council set a date for a heritage hearing to consider the inclusion of the subject property in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality, and to approve the request to include 173 Crichton Avenue, Dartmouth in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality as shown on Map 1 as a municipal heritage property under the Heritage Property Act.
Thank you, David. Is there anyone who wants to second that motion?
I'll second. It's Luke.
Luke, thank you very much. So if we would like to hear those who are in favor.
Aye.
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 Sounds good. Anyone who care to vote negatively? Nobody. So the motion is passed. So bear with me. I'm using 2 computers at once here. All right, so we can move on now to, hold on, item number 9.1.2. And that is case H00514, the 2021-22 Financial Incentives Program for Schmidtville and the Old South Suburb Heritage Conservation Districts. And I assume again that we have a presentation from staff. So Aaron, if you're going to take care of this, then take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to members of the committee. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Aaron Murnahan, Principal Heritage Planner. I should give credit where credit is due. This report and its associated presentation, it was done by my colleague Paul Boucher, who's on vacation this week, so I'm going to be doing this on his behalf. And also, most of the committee will be familiar with this incentives program. It was just approved by Regional Council and reviewed by this committee in the spring of this year, so it's still fairly fresh. Can you see my presentation, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so this is the first year of the financial incentives program for Schmidtville and Old South Suburb Heritage Conservation Districts. I'll just be running you through the basics of the program and also the eligible applicants for this year. So the program supports the conservation of contributing heritage resources and existing buildings located in the two newest heritage conservation districts in HRM, those being Schmidtville and Old South Suburb, as I mentioned. The program's guidelines and budget were approved by Regional Council on March the 23rd of this year, and the program is set to run for 5 years, ending in fiscal year 2025-2026. There's two types of grants under this program. The first one is a conservation grant, and it's applicable to projects that preserve, rehabilitate, and restore character-defining elements on the exterior of contributing heritage resources. It's awarded on a 50% cost-sharing basis, exclusive of HST, and every property owner is eligible for up to 2 grants per contributing heritage resource on their property. And the maximum cumulative grant over the lifetime of the program is $50,000. There's also functional improvement grants, and these are applicable to projects that improve the overall quality of existing building systems, including accessibility, HVAC, electrical, structural, plumbing, et cetera, these are awarded on a 15% cost share basis for eligible costs. And each property owner is eligible for up to 2 grants, totaling cumulatively $800,000 over the life of the program. In terms of the evaluation process, this year, the first year of the program, applications were accepted for a fairly short time frame between March the 24th and June 1st, 2021, which somewhat explains why we didn't receive a whole lot of applications this year. Applications in subsequent years will be accepted annually between January the 1st and March the 1st. Staff ensure that the eligibility criteria that's contained in the administrative order, that's also within your staff report, are satisfied for each eligible applicant. And we rank each application based on a set of adopted criteria, which I will get into momentarily. The anticipated cumulative payout for this year is $258,957.24 out of a total approved program budget for this year of $800,000. And just touching on that scoring criteria, which really didn't come into play much this year because we are only using somewhere around a quarter of our total program budget for the year. But we look at such things as whether the building is identified as a contributing heritage resource within the district. Is it a first-time applicant? Is it supported by a building conservation plan, et cetera, et cetera? So this table of prioritization criteria is also found within your staff report. But as I say, this really didn't come into play much this year because everyone was able to achieve the total grant that they were looking for. So this year, 15 applications were received. 4 applications were found to be ineligible. And of those, 3 did not meet the eligibility requirements, and 1 was withdrawn by the applicant with the thought that they will apply in future years. One application before you does have issues with building permits, which staff are working with the property owner to fix. But under the rules of the administrative order, if those permits are not issued by the time council approves the payout for the grant, then it cannot be issued to that particular property owner. And I'll just run you through quickly those 15 eligible grant recipients. So the first one is 1337 to 55 Dresden Row, which is to install Cape Cod siding on the north and east elevations of the existing building. So the total project cost in this case is $86,500, and the proposed grant is $43,250. 5589 Morris Street. This property owner is removing the vinyl siding and replacing it with wood shingles. The proposed grant in this case is $52,208. 1349 Brenton Street. This is to paint, replace second floor windows, and repair the foundation and upgrade the entryway. $22,670. 5131 Morris Street to repair the roof, gutters, downspout, and paint the building. This is for $12,450. 5642 Morris Street to repair and replace the roof. The proposed grant is $8,000. 5512 to 14 Clyde Street. This is for insulation. Install separate HVAC and heat pump system, kitchen and bathroom venting, and this is part of a much larger project to restore this building, which has been ongoing for some time. Proposed grant here is $8,377. 5512 Clyde Street. This is for insulation, an HVAC system, ductwork, and new plumbing. $3,196. 1328 to 1332 Hollis Street. This is to replace an exterior fire escape and exterior staircase for $12,878. I should note that this is one of the only 18th century buildings in any of our heritage districts. 5666 Hollis Street, reshingle the roof and replace a skylight for $14,374. 5621 Morris Street to reshingle the roof, replace shingle on two sides of the dwelling and wood doors and one window for $40,061. 1357 Birmingham Street to replace 18 windows and paint, and the proposed grant for this is $41,191. And that completes the summary of the eligible applicants. So I have a recommendation here for the committee.
All right, thank you very much, Aaron. I believe in the past we have, when we've had similar lists of applications, we've approved them as a block rather than going through them one by one. Some discussion over individual cases if it's necessary. Simon, can you remind me of how we've proceeded in the past?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe that's correct. I believe in the past that the items have been approved as a block, and if there's any discussion at this time regarding property grants that committee would like to discuss further, we would discuss those first and note them by prior to the completion of the full motion.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll just confirm that as well. The intention is for approval of the entire block, but if the committee would like to pick any of those individual applications for further discussion or reconsideration, we can certainly do that.
Sounds good. So there are 10 properties. Are there any specific ones that anyone wants to comment on, or?
It's Lois.
Lois,
go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I'm interested in the first one, 1351 Dresden Row. Is that a conservation grant or a functional grant? And have they done some siding already? I'm a little unclear. And the place is only about 40 years old. And I realize that it is eligible under the broader terms of the the program, but I'm just curious, the questions I've raised.
Sure. So in this case, under the terms of the administrative order, the repair or replacement or installation of traditional building materials is covered by the grant program. And that's to encourage property owners who have non-historic buildings to bring those buildings a little bit more into conformance with the aesthetics of the district. So in this case, repairing and replacing wood siding or removing vinyl siding and replacing with traditional wood siding, for instance, would be covered by the program. And that's what's happening in this particular case.
Thank you, Aaron. Have they done any work yet on the other sides of the building? Well, the south side would abuts another residence, but I was a little unclear, especially looking at the photographs.
I'm unsure if they have done work. It would predate the adoption of the district, because any work since then we would have had to approve as a certificate of appropriateness. So since I haven't seen that come across any of our desks as of yet, I would assume that work was done previous to 2019.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
It's Jennifer. I have an overall question. I noticed in some of them they had, replacing skylights, HVAC systems. I'm wondering, do we give credit for upgrading of things that have nothing to do with the heritage part of the building? I'm pretty sure it was more than likely no skylights and air conditioners.
Sure, so we do, and those typically fall under the functional improvement portion of the program. And that's really, when you have elements on the roof of the building or roofing itself, or structural elements, it's really about building functionality, but also the structural longevity of the building. So we're trying to ensure that these buildings are energy efficient, accessible, and as functional as possible going forward. So it's really about bringing the whole quality of the building envelopes within the district up to a higher level of quality.
Thank you.
And I believe that the city is only contributing 15% in cases like that. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Rather
So
than
15% for the functional improvement, and then up to 50% for the conservation of historic elements on the exterior of the building.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Either on the properties here or the program as a whole? Well, in the absence of comments, then perhaps I could call upon somebody to propose this motion. Cassandra.
Sure.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking, so I didn't want to overstep, but so I will move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that Council approve the proposed grants to the properties listed in Attachment A, conditional upon the applicant's compliance with Section 7, 36 through 39 of Administrative Order Number 2020-005-ADM, and the requirements specified in Attachment A be satisfied.
Thank you, Cassandra. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second. Luke.
Luke. Thank you, Luke. All right. So can we hear a round of yeas or nays? Those in favor, please.
Aye.
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 All right. And
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion unanimously carried.
Thank you, members of the committee and Mr. Chair.
All right. And thank you to the staff for your contributions today. That pretty much wraps up our agenda, which again is on another computer, so hold on. All right, and do we have any more business from the floor itself before we wrap up, or any motions or discussions that we've not yet Not yet seen to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't believe there's any additional items as of this time. None have been added during the approval of the order of business, and I can just briefly confirm that the date of the next meeting is September 22nd, 2021.
All right, I'll write that on my calendar. And if I could have a motion to adjourn then.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you very much. And I don't believe that has to be seconded. So the meeting is concluded, and thank you everyone so much for coming. And see you on the 22nd of September.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Enjoy
Have a
the rest
great
of summer.
day.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.